All right, welcome to Witchpolice Radio. As people who listen to the show for a long time know, I like to get as varied as I can as far as genres. And I mean, one episode I could be talking to a country singer, the next a rapper, the next a classical artist, the next anything really. It's pretty wide range as long as there's a Manitoba connection. And for this episode of the podcast, I'm going somewhere I haven't really been before. I've definitely had jazz artists on the show in the past, but today we're talking about the Winnipeg Jazz Orchestra, which is something else entirely. I mean, at least in terms of size, in terms of the amount of people involved in these projects. So I think that the best way to start this off is if my guest wants to introduce himself and give a bit of background about the orchestra, because I know you've been around for a long time doing this. But yeah, let's start from there.
Right. My name is Richard Gillis. I've been I guess I was the co-founder of the Winnipeg Jazz Orchestra in 1997, which puts us in our 26th season now. And when Sasha Boychuk, a saxophone player, and myself started the group in 1997, our vision was to have a concert series, have a concert jazz band. And because there was so much great big band music out there and still being produced. And, most people, when they think of big band, they think of their first thought would be the swing era and Glenn Miller and popular bands from that period of time. And some of those they were great bands, and there were a lot of them at that time, being the popular music of the time. But since then, there's been fabulous music being produced and more listening music and art music as opposed to dance music as it was in the swing era.
Yeah. Well, and so that's a long time to have been around for any type of group to have that kind of history going back to the late 90s. How is it's obviously a large group. It's a big band. How much does the membership of the group kind of shift from year to year and from project to project? Is it a pretty set group of people, or is it fairly fluid?
Well, to begin with, it was pretty set, and it was set for many years until after about 10 or 12 years, I began to say to the group, there's so many great players in town in Winnipeg. There's so many great players and young players coming up and things like that. So rather than wait for somebody to be away or sick or something like that, I told everybody, listen, you got to take a concert off a year. And then it turned into maybe a little bit more. I tried to increase the number of activities we were doing so that we could incorporate more players. In the last few years, probably the last 4 years, we've started to say, all right, we are a nonprofit institution that represents our community. Yeah. And so we can't just be a band. We have to be an organization that focuses on the important things, which is make the best music we can, but also really support the growth of big band in terms of an artistic endeavor and also as a community endeavor. Involve more players, think about diversity and inclusion. And so we've really made a point of trying to increase the activities that we do so we can involve more people. We keep the people that have been with us originally as much as we can involved in our performances, but we are really trying to, increase the female players especially, but just trying to make connections with communities as well. So right now, this year, we'll probably rotate about 42 or 3 players through the group. So, and we're quite happy with that progress that we've made in that area. Because I think it develops the players better, helps people get to know each other, keeps everyone on their toes a little bit. You can get kind of lazy, I think, if you expect, all the gigs, if you'd say it like that. But
yeah, sure. Well, and I guess as far as that diversity, is there a pretty wide age range in terms of who's involved in the orchestra, from younger players, older players, up and coming ones as well?
Absolutely. The key is, as long as you play well enough to fit into that kind of a format, because we also do education and outreach. We have big band workshop for high school students, and we have online resources, and but as players develop, if we're able to involve them, we certainly try to involve them. I had a project this past year that I got some funds to commission 5, developing composers and artists, and we got them to write a piece, and they were mentored by a Canadian jazz composer, and we're just in the process of wrapping up recording those tunes as well.
Oh, cool. Okay. Well, and that sounds at least a little bit similar to this new record that came out at the end of last month, which is Voices of Musical Heritage. And on this, I mean, you can definitely tell me more about it than I'm going to tell you here, because it's your project. But I mean, you have all these composers and people from different backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, different musical backgrounds, bringing in sort of all of these varied aspects from different countries and different backgrounds, and then sort of putting them through the big band filter, I guess. How did this get started? How did this project get kicked off?
Well, we've been around for a while, and we've been searching for the right kinds of projects that funders would be interested in funding. Canada Council especially. And so we had different projects, and we did a great project a few years ago, Canada 150, where we had composers write things that, movements that reflected some aspect of Canada. And that was a great recording. And then we hit on the idea of combining composers from across Canada. So then we did a recording with David Braid and Philip Cote, one from Toronto, one from Montreal. They didn't know each other, but they were both great composers. Put them together, and they came up with just an amazing suite.
Yeah, that's a cool record. The one you did those things.
They did a great job, and it took us in a different direction than we would normally, and it took the composers in a different direction. So for this one, we started off with John Stech, who's a Ukrainian background, and we asked him to do something that was related to his background. We expanded the project a little bit to have a few more composers, reflecting the background that they're from. And they're, even though they're in Winnipeg, we're all influenced by our backgrounds. And because of COVID, we, the project was delayed. Well, all of our projects, our last recording was delayed too, but this was delayed over 2 years. So during that time, we expanded the project a little bit. I got Dr. Henry and to write a piece, and Marco Castillo to write a piece. So the project expanded, which was really worked out well for us. So the whole idea came together early. And, sometimes once you've figured it, once it's fully formed, the idea, it seems like, that's a no-brainer. But at the time when you're developing these things, it's sort of pieces comes together slowly. But we started off with John Stech and a couple of other pieces, and then it just kind of went from there. And we ended up with 8 different composers.
I think it's a good reflection too on how kind of varied jazz is as an umbrella genre of music. There's so many offshoots and subgenres and different regional and cultural differences. I mean, someone like Dr. Henry, his band is phenomenal, and I wouldn't necessarily. I don't think people would assume that he's a jazz player or has that kind of background, listening to the kind of Afrobeat sort of style that he has with his own band, and Marco Castillo as well. I mean, he's doing the little Latin thing, but it's all connected, right? There's all these different elements that go back to the umbrella jazz genre.
Yeah. I think that jazz is uniquely able because it's such an oral tradition, and it picks up ideas from all over. I think it's positioned very well to collaborate with all sorts of groups. I mean, you don't have to write music out. Really, Now, with a big band, yes, you do, but there's ways that you can collaborate that are really, really interesting. It does take some arranging and thinking about, okay, how are we going to do this? But it's kind of positioned well to collaborate with different communities and different cultures.
Well, how much time goes into a project like this? I mean, looking at the credits on the CD, you have a lot of different roles as far as production and arranging and playing on it. I mean, it seems like it's just gathering all of these composers first of all, and getting their work, and then arranging it for a band of this size. It's got to be quite an ordeal, almost in a positive way. I mean, whatever the positive version of an ordeal is.
Yeah. Well, anything you do that is worthwhile, that you think is worth doing, you don't count the hours. It's only when you don't like something that you count the hours. There's, I guess I started to count the hours when I was, doing in the studio, just being there with the other people that were recording and stuff. I thought I'd just keep track, but it's a lot of hours. Not just, let's say, doing the recording. Sometimes it involves planning. Sometimes it involves just figuring out what direction are we going to go on this, or researching certain things that need to be done. Or dealing with the composers sometimes, just like working with them on getting their music done. With Dr. Henry, what I did was I arranged it for him. He gave me a recording of one of his tunes, or a couple of his tunes, and I picked one of them, and I thought, man, this is so great. And so, but I had to think, like, how am I going to translate this into a big band? How am I going to do this? So you get ideas and you write them down. Sometimes it takes you a certain direction. You decide, nah, and you scratch that and start over again. But so yeah, it's an enormous amount of hours, but you don't count them, because it's like, as they say, music is, you play music, you don't work music.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't even, I guess I could make a wild guess, but a lot of time went into the composing and the arranging and the recording, the planning and the recording, and the grant writing.
Sure.
And the grant reports, which still have to be finished up. And in the marketing and the whole idea, and then the figuring out what you're going to do next. What's the next goal?
Well, that was kind of what my next question was. Not necessarily what's the next project for the orchestra, but sort of what happens with this now. The album's out. The recording's finished. It's on a disc. It's online. People can hear it. Now, what do you do with it? I mean, I know we're kind of still in the questionable time as far as COVID is concerned. Right. Shows are happening, which is fantastic for all types of music, but who knows, next week it could change and things go back to lockdown. And with such a big group, I mean, how do you sort of plan for what to do with this music now that it's out?
Well, that's always the challenge, because for me as a musician, once you do a concert, it's done. You're practicing for the next concert, or you're planning for the next season, or you're planning and making grants for the next recording. So we have to challenge ourselves to kind of like, okay, let's what are we going to do with this one? So what we're going to do is try to get it out there, to make sure that we have reviews. Reviews are very important. Beyond that, I mean, you're right. Once it's out and once people have heard it, just hopefully, as you build up a library of material that's good. I mean, I could talk to you about the Suite 150 we did in 1997. Just tremendous. It's a great album. And in the Twisting Ways our last one, also great, just different, very different. And this one's probably one of the most listenable albums. Except maybe our second one, which is like vocalist, lots of vocal tunes and things. And then we had a Christmas album, but this one just has got such a diverse sound, like through it. It's eclectic.
Well, and that's hopefully can appeal to people who maybe are a little hesitant about big band, or they have these associations, like you said at the beginning, that they think of the swing era and they don't really realize that it has progressed beyond that time period, right? They'll hear all these different influences and different composers bringing their own sound to it. Yeah.
Some people like that. They really want it. They want to hear a melody, and that's what And if they can't quite tell it's a melody, it could be very beautiful, but to them, it's hard for them. Others, they really want, like, rhythm is what's really drives them. And, this particular album just has a lot of both of those. And so I just think it should be really accessible to people. But we'll keep on, showcasing this album for the next little while. We actually have another album just in the works, because we've had a backlog because of COVID.
Sure.
We'll probably wait until early fall next year to release it. But anyway, there's lots going on.
With this album and with the opportunities to perform it live, perform parts of it live, do you have you brought some of the composers in to participate in live shows, or are you planning on doing that?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, Rodrigo Munoz often plays with performances with the group. He performed last December with us, last Christmas. And just trying to think, Marco Castillo. We're playing out of town. We're playing some in Manitoba concerts in January, and he's part of that.
Cool.
Dr. Henry will be with us for an March the 19th concert at CCFM. And Jeff Preslav, yeah, he's coming on tour with us in December. And so, yeah, I mean, most people are from town, and we'd like to bring John Stetch in at some point. Just when the time is right, we'll figure that out. We're still, audiences are still not what they were before pre-COVID. So, we'll just scale back our size of our productions.
Well, is there a way to, I mean, when you're performing live, is it always, are some of these pieces kind of, whether it's this album or past albums, are they reworkable? So if you have a smaller version of the group that can be played as well, or is it always sort of requiring the full complement of the Winnipeg Jazz Orchestra?
Well, the Winnipeg Jazz Orchestra is a jazz orchestra, so it is a big band.
Yeah,
and we there have been times where people, even some of the players, have said, "Well, why don't we do a small group?" And it's sort of like you can, but the energy you get when you get 16, 17 players on stage is like special.
Yeah.
And there's so much great music. And it takes so much time to write the pieces in the first place that to scale them back, that would take just as much work. And, so we have been able to work the pieces, reuse pieces in other concerts. Absolutely. Because, for example, we're doing The Grinch Who Stole Christmas on Thursday, this coming Thursday. And that was a program we developed for this particular year.
Okay.
And that was a lot of work. And it's turned out really well with Quinn Green as the narrator. And we're going to use that, bring it back every 3 years or something like that. And we have a Charlie Brown Christmas program that we do. We'll do the same thing. So the material off of this recording that we have, we'll play some of the pieces on occasion and work them in. And probably we'll do another, at least we'll revisit this theme. We'll revisit maybe a Voices 2, where we can get, again, we've got 8 pieces, but there are more than 8 cultures, in Winnipeg that you can draw from. And so we'll just keep that idea flowing, because boy, there's so many people to collaborate with.
Yeah, it's a really interesting idea. If people want to find out more about the orchestra and find out about upcoming performances, find out where they can hear some of the older music and this album, what's the best way? Where would you point them online, I guess, to find out more?
Certainly our website, winnipegjazzorchestra.com, for sure. You can find the music on Bandcamp. That's a great place to go. Obviously, Spotify and places like that. Trouble is, we get a portion of a cent as opposed to Bandcamp works so much better. So winnipegjazzorchestra.com or Bandcamp are great places to check it out. We have a lot of resources on winnipegjazzorchestra.com too, and play along kinds of materials and some educational videos. We also have available we're putting out concert videos this year. So we'll have 6 concert videos that we're making. We've already made 3 of them. And we're just, the Grinch program is going to come online this Friday.
Oh, cool.
So, so there's things there.
And then as far as the physical CD, I mean, people can obviously order that online, but where else can they get it? Is it available at local stores here in Winnipeg?
Well, it's available at our concerts. I know
that makes sense. Yeah.
I know that McNally Robinson in town has handled our things. And we'll probably put some there, but certainly at our concerts. I mean, who knows how long CDs will be a thing, but they still are. some people. So we've
Yeah,
got a
well,
few.
I'm in that group. I still listen to. I haven't moved on to Spotify yet. I'm still listening to records and tapes and CDs. So we're out there.
Yeah.
There's people out
Yeah.
there.
The nice thing about a CD too is that, you know, the artwork and the information, that's kind of like, I don't know why Spotify and some of these groups don't have it so that you can access all that material. So you can see who's on the album, you know, things like that. But
Some of the
anyway,
most important information right there is to find out, especially
absolutely.
when the group is as big as yours, to find out who's, you know, you hear a solo, you want to know who's playing that
Yep.
and then find their other work.
Yeah.